So we have a huge pro wrestling weekend. Actually, the last couple weeks have been enormous. I mean, with AEW Forbidden Door last weekend, but one of our absolute favorite pay-per-views of the year, WWE Money in the Bank this weekend in London. And joining us here, I mean, got to be one of the busiest guys in media. All right, Peter Rosenberg, Hot 97 every morning. You got ESPN New York in the afternoons, Michael K. Show. Obviously, I listen to him, Cheap Heat, the Ring of Wrestling podcast network there. Peter, always love having you on. I appreciate you making time for us here. But first, though, I am going to ask you a sports question, okay?
Okay.
I'm here in Miami, of course. You're up there in New York, but you are a huge Boston Celtics fan, and you were devastated last week with the Marcus Smart trade. So have you recovered? Bring me through the emotions there.
I'm getting there. It was like a real throwback little kid feeling of like, man, like I hadn't felt that in a long time, like a really considerable annoying. I mean, I've had like smaller versions of it, but not like this one. I'd have to go through and think. I mean, because not just because he's a player on a team that I loved, but because you barely need to know the game of basketball to know that he's like a complete heart and soul player for a team. I think everyone who's watched the Celtics in any way, I'm sure for you as a Heat fan, you're able to see like, Marcus Smart. I mean, this is a guy you just want on your team. You hate to root against him. You love to root for him. And so that one was it was a sting, and not because I think it's a bad trade necessarily. I mean, I trust Brad Stevens, and I think it's smart. I just, no pun intended, he will be missed, man. He was a real special player, and in fact, I went to Game 5 against the Heat in Boston, and it was one of the most fun. It actually was so fun that even when the Celtics lost 7, I still was so glad I went to 5. Like, it was just you could tell at that moment that this thing was probably going to go 7. Like, it just, the moment was so big. And I went up there and I didn't have any Celtics gear with me, and I hadn't bought a jersey in years. And like, I just went to the team shop, and like the only jersey I considered buying was Marcus Smart. Like, I just went and bought the Smart jersey. Like, well, I'll have this forever. You never know what's going to happen with like your big star, but like Marcus just signed. Like, he's not going anywhere. And here we are. So as you can tell by the words I needed to answer, I guess I'm still working my way through it.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of the problem was the day before you were just giving up Malcolm Brogdon, and then you woke up the next morning and you didn't have Marcus Smart anymore in the same deal.
That's what drove me so nuts. I didn't understand it because I felt pretty good about Brogdon going. I was like, whatever. I mean, we'd had him for 5 minutes. There's no connection at all. He's sixth man of the year. He's a good player, but in the playoffs, you were like, I don't know what we really have with this guy. All right, cool. Go to sleep at 11:30, and then when I wake up, I see like it trending, and I click on a post, and it's Woj, and I'm like, wait, this must be about Brogdon. Like, what is? I was in such a fog, and then I was like, oh my God, how do you change? Like, yes, I mean, I guess Marcus runs point and so does Brogdon, but they're such completely different players on the team that I'm like, how was that even possible? So my new prediction is, though, starting to believe that one day things will like not work out in Memphis as a team because Ja just, who knows what's going to happen there.
Mm-hmm.
And the Celtics end up finding a way after like a year to bring Marcus Smart back. I really would like to believe that. Like, wouldn't that be very smart? Like, he does the job, gets them things they need, and then ends up coming back anyway. I mean, listen, we not that he's the same level, but Horford was gone for a minute, and now he feels like he's kind of always been there.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So who knows? That's all. When Antoine Walker came back all those years ago, I was so thrilled. I'd love to see the same for Smart.
I was going to say, I mean, Antoine won a championship with us, and then I'm pretty sure I remember him going back to Boston eventually. Yeah.
He did. It was about, I think with Antoine, it was like 2 years that he was gone, something like that. And then he was back and had a good run. They went to the playoffs, had that special comeback playoff game against the Nets that at the time was like the biggest comeback in playoff history. Now it's done like, 3 times a week.
Right.
Because what is a 25-point lead in the NBA now? But yeah, we'll see.
Let's talk about Money in the Bank this weekend. First of all, are you going to London? Are you involved in that?
I'm not. When they do the international PLEs.
Then you're back in studio.
I'm in studio in Stanford, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it's something about, I think they don't like traveling the stuff that they use, the extra actual physical stuff for the kickoff show. They just don't bring it overseas. So it's a little bit of a bummer. I'd like to change that one day. But for now, I'll be in beautiful Stanford.
I'm super excited for this show. I think these are 2 Money in the Bank matches where, man, I could see it going a number of different ways. Let me ask you on the men's side. I think I'm probably like most people. I love LA Knight. Boy, is he fantastic. He was great with you guys on Cheap Heat last week. And I really hope he wins. I don't see a scenario where Logan Paul's not winning this Money in the Bank, Peter. I mean, it doesn't do anything for me, but WWE probably says, hey, we let Logan Paul hold on to that briefcase for 4, 5, 6 months. He's doing every YouTube video he does with millions of viewers, and he's holding our Money in the Bank briefcase. That's big time publicity. I don't see a way out of Logan Paul winning this.
Yeah, that's a convincing take. I've seen a lot of people leaning that way. That it just has to be Logan Paul. For me, even though that is a compelling argument as why it would make sense to him to have it, but I just think this is a moment to do something with LA Knight immediately. I mean, the fact of the matter is Logan Paul any more over right now than he was 6 months ago? Is there any reason that his reach is bigger now than it was? Has he given any indication that, he's wrapping this up anytime soon? I mean, I think they're in a good position with Logan Paul. And with LA Knight, I mean, listen, I'll just say this. When Logan Paul was in Cleveland two weeks ago, his reaction there was the same as it was in Cleveland a year or 2 ago when they did a similar skit with him and The Miz. I love Logan Paul. I'm waiting for the big crowd reaction. It hasn't happened yet. And I don't think it's going to happen from the briefcase being on him. In fact, if they wanted to be booed, I think that will be more boos.
Yeah.
I think the way to get Logan Paul up a level with your fans, if that's something you care about, and who knows if anyone does, is as I outlined on Cheap Heat this week, all he has to do is show up to England and have an amazing moment or two and not win the briefcase. And I think Logan Paul is it's another notch of respect for fans of oh man, he didn't win, but he did. Him and Ricochet flew off 9 ladders all over O2, and it was a moment. I just don't know that it does enough. But LA Knight, on the other hand, to me, this guy is 40 years old and he's hot right now. And I think the idea of when you hand him that briefcase, LA Knight all of a sudden is must-see TV. He goes from the guy that the fans are excited for to now he's got a real catalyst as a character constantly over the next several months. So I hear everyone's argument for Logan Paul. I know Sam Roberts said the same thing, and many other people have. I'm gonna stay with LA Knight.
Yeah, I really hope it's LA Knight. Loved him, back when he first got to NXT. Was so confused when they made him Max Dupree, and thank God, he got out of it. And I thought he had such a great answer with you, where you asked him, "Did you take anything from the Max Dupree character, and you're able to apply it to what you're doing right now?" And his answer was, "I wish I could say yes." It's such a great response from him.
I loved it too. Yeah, he. Listen, I was not the first person to gravitate to LA Knight. That is for sure. It's been a slow burn for me. I have followed the crowd. I've not been in the front of it.
Oh, he's great.
He won a lot of points for me just in that conversation the other day. I was like, oh, now I'm feeling the charisma that everyone else is sort of feeling. I felt it in the conversation.
It would be such a cool moment. And it's funny because you probably feel this way too, as we've both gotten older. We're little kids loving pro wrestling. And back then, you wanted the guy you loved to win. That's what it was about. But as we get older, it's just about experiencing the moment, right? We want to be a part of the big moment. Do you have growing up as a pro wrestling fan? Do you have a moment like what's your favorite moment you attended as a pro wrestling fan?
Do you want from childhood or from? Because really, my big thing's adulthood for the
Yeah,
shows I've
just
been to.
not work related as a fan.
Mania 30 was spectacular. Um, you know, for me, there was a huge gap. I went to two shows in like 1987, 88 at the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland. And then I didn't go to another show until 2005 when I went to like a random TV.
We all go through those gaps. All of us have those periods where we weren't watching.
Yeah, mine was entirely too long, especially considering I was in college during the Attitude Era and like everyone was watching but me. Like that's borderline unforgivable, but I've made up for it. It's made for a lot of fun going back.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I'd say that Mania 32 in Dallas. That would be a good one. I mean, there's so many I could throw out there. I'll throw out that one, and that's maybe the last one I went to before I started working. But it was like that was the Sting, Triple H.
Yeah.
That was 32, right?
31. 32 was Dallas. 31 was San Francisco. That was Sting.
And that was Sting and everyone. And so 32 in Dallas was the Hogan, Rock, Austin thing at the beginning.
Yeah, right.
Where he called it the Superdome or whatever he said.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, damn, it's so hard. But yeah, one of those, 31, 32, or frankly, just getting to see Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat in a steel cage in 1987. I mean,
wow.
I've had a lot of really memorable ones.
Wow. The women's Money in the Bank. I don't know where that one's headed. I'd like to see Bayley win it. What do you got for the women?
I'm being sort of lazy because I keep thinking about who's going to challenge for the title. Obviously, that's what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
And we have two bad guys on top of the women's division in Asuka and Rhea Ripley. So the lazy part of me is just like, who is a reasonable pick to win? And who would you actually want to see challenging one of these people? And so I end up falling onto Becky Lynch. I love the idea of Zelina Vega getting the briefcase. I think that could be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Except she just had the thing with Rhea in Puerto Rico.
That's the thing. So like, how does she reasonably?
What about we finally get? We've all been waiting for years. We get Asuka and Io Sky doing a big program together, and Io wins that briefcase and eventually cashes in.
And that could be fun. I don't know from like a promo standpoint how much you can get out of Io and Asuka.
Love them yelling curses in Japanese to each other.
No, listen. And by the way, this doesn't have to be an endless story. Like, that's the thing about the cash-in. Like, it can just happen. You don't really have to have a story between the briefcase holder and the champion. So I guess thinking about promos doesn't really matter because it can really just be one day and it's done.
I like when they hold on to it. I hate, and it doesn't happen often, but we've had it happen several times over the years where they cash in the night of. I hate that. I like when the briefcase is a story over several months.
I agree. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it happen instantaneously. I think that's stupid as well. So yeah, Becky's my lazy choice. You're right. Zelina probably wouldn't happen considering the moment she just had. Though, you know, there are people who could fantasize over an Escobar Zelina upset sweep and the LWO all of a sudden is
everyone loves LWO right now. Everyone loves
right.
Them.
And now all of a sudden they're being talked about next to the Judgment Day and the Bloodline as like a really formidable faction. So, but I lean towards Becky. She's never gotten it. She's an all-time great. I just lean towards Becky.
The last time we spoke, Peter, was before WrestleMania. What did you make of Cody not winning? And if you had a problem with Cody not winning, are you happy with the way it's worked out? Because, man, there's still so many tentacles to the whole Bloodline story with Roman still having that title.
Listen, I won't say I had a problem with it. I would say I popped because I was just so surprised.
Right.
To me, I'm so often just there for the surprise. So whichever direction that surprise comes from, like, I'm excited. So when the ref's hand hit 3, like, I couldn't believe that it was Roman who was on top. Now you fast forward a little bit and you see everything that happens with the new titles and all these different things. And part of you starts to go, wouldn't this have just been easier to, like, had him lose one of the titles, one of the nights of WrestleMania? And another compelling argument you can make is right now, the Bloodline story doesn't even need titles.
Right.
You know, like that whole idea of, oh my God, Roman's had the title over 1,000 days. Doesn't that kind of feel like we've been there and done that and it's kind of over? Like, now the titles just kind of feel like spice. But like, what's really the entree here is, how is this family all going to completely come apart? So,
well, I feel like we're headed toward Roman and Jay at SummerSlam. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean, or it depends how long they want to keep taking this thing, because you could also go Roman and Jimmy. They get their shake at it.
Right.
Because, and then at some point it's Jay who actually dethrones him, is an idea that gets sort of thrown about. You know, we've had listeners suggest Paul abandons him and ends up with Solo, and it's Solo who takes him out.
Wow, how about that?
Because Paul decides Solo is really where the money is in the future and moves with Solo. So no, but I think the safe bet is Jay at SummerSlam. The wacky bet would be Jimmy. The wackier and fun bet would be, and this is another thing that comes from a listener, I don't take credit for it. The wackier SummerSlam would be, because they're saying the Bloodline Civil War begins. That's an important piece, I think, of the way everything's being pushed. Do we eventually get to that fatal 4-way between all 4 members of the Bloodline? And could that be something you do at SummerSlam? But I think safe money, I'd say, is Jay. Yeah.
You know, I don't read the dirt sheets and stuff. I number one, I don't like stuff being spoiled for me, so
Good
I don't want
to. As you should.
Like, I don't understand. I watch Game of Thrones, you know, when it used to be on. I don't want to know who's going to win, so I don't like reading the spoilers. It's a TV show, so I don't read the dirt sheets, you know, for that kind of stuff. But every once in a while, you'll see shit that slips through on Twitter, and I wonder, as someone who's involved and someone who releases, you got to be at least a little bit in the know. Do you ever see stuff and you're like, man, that is just total bullshit? I can't believe people believe this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I never know, you know, what's going on story-wise. So, and that kind of stuff, no. But when it comes to, like, you know,
this guy's got heat on him.
Yes,
you know, that kind of stuff.
And I've even seen, like, specific stories that I'm like, that is not what that was at all. And in fact, it blows your mind, because, like, here's what I don't understand, and I feel super strongly about this. I don't understand how someone could get to WWE and wanted to be there presumably as much as I wanted to be there before I got there, and then shares this stuff. Like, and I have to tell you, I know of people who do. I hear about it.
Right.
They don't send it to me, but I hear about it. And dude, I'm just like, do you love this or not? Like, you know what I guess it is?
Why do you want to be the rat, you know?
I'm such a mark for it that I would never give it away to other people.
Right.
I think other people really love it. But as much as they're a mark for wrestling, they're more a mark for themselves. And they really want to get that feeling of telling people information like, can you believe I know this?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, no one cares about you. Like, everyone's happy you got a job there. That's neat. But, like, I don't think my friends and colleagues' interest in WWE hinges on whether or not I work there. So I don't need, like, the joy for me is just getting to be a part of it. And, like, if I sound preachy, I feel that way. I really don't understand it. Like, I've gotten to be there, a fly on the wall, and things that are so cool that I'm like, I will never get to tell the story that does this justice. I would never take a picture. Well, couldn't even tell anyone, but this is so cool. Like, and I just, oh my God, I'm so lucky. And so I guess I'm just such a fan of it. That's the idea of doing that. Who does that?
Have you ever seen, have you gotten the opportunity to meet one of these guys who you loved as a kid, maybe, or growing up, and you almost don't want to meet them because you don't want your impression of them in your mind to be ruined. It's like when don't meet your idols, So have you ever had an experience like that where you were nervous to meet so-and-so, but you ended up being so happy to because, man, they turned out to be really awesome?
I mean, I'll tell you what, in WWE, the percentage of great people among talent is just obscenely high. Like, it's just the people I don't really care for are so few and far between, and even among legends who come back, I don't have a bad interaction that I recall. I mean, I maybe have some that are like nothing, like you could tell the person just doesn't care one way or the other very much.
Mm-hmm.
But man, 9 times out of 10, everyone, I seriously, it's that's something I see that is really reported wrong all the time. How unhappy everybody is.
Oh, everyone's miserable. Apparently.
Everyone's miserable.
The worst working environment.
Oh my God. And like, listen, I'm not there every day, so I don't get to report. You could ask other people what it's like every day. As the person who's just popping in monthly or whatever it is, man, everyone's excited. Come PLE days, everyone's in a good mood. Everyone's ready to go. Everyone sees it as a big deal. Everyone really wants to put on a show. That is the most misleading thing. So to answer kind of that together, no, I don't have those experiences where I'm like, man, I'm kind of wish I hadn't gotten that, from everyone, whether it's the limited interactions I've had with Vince McMahon to getting to be around people like Pat Patterson, God rest his soul. Like, everyone was cool. Everyone was down to tell a story, answer a question, whatever. I hate to disappoint the people who hate WWE, but no, I've never had that bad experience.
It's such a funny response. You're right. That's what you get the most. Morale has never been lower. Never been lower. I mean, they have to half the roster is going to kill themselves. They're so depressed.
I know. They can't even make it from one day to the next. I know. It's brutal.
Finally here, Peter, greatest Money in the Bank cash-in is what? I really think it comes down to 2. It depends which one you love more. What's the greatest Money in the Bank cash-in?
Well, that's a really good one too. The one that comes to my mind the most is probably the Daniel Bryan on Raw, right? I think it was an episode of, I think it was Raw.
Over Big Show?
Yeah, was it Raw after Mania?
Maybe.
Or was it Raw after SummerSlam? Either way,
I think your favorite.
I think the sincere joy I had at realizing, like, oh my God, Daniel Bryan's actually going to win here. It just like, and this is so early in Daniel Bryan's career relative to where it ended up landing for him. It was not a foregone conclusion that guy was going to be a multi-time world champion, at that time.
Right.
So I would say that one. Obviously, I know people love Dolph in New Jersey.
Raw after Mania. Yep.
Raw after Mania. I know that one hits for a lot of people. But yeah, I'll go with DB.
I always think it's between Dolph right there and Seth Rollins, which I think Seth is the
at Mania.
Yeah, I think that's the greatest one. Because that was the one where I'm sitting on my couch watching and I'm relaxed, and then as music hits and you get up to the edge of the couch, go, holy shit.
This is happening now.
Yeah.
And to your point that you made earlier, that's what you want it to ultimately to be. That's why you don't like it to be wasted early, because you rarely get to have that feeling if it happens the same night or the next week. At the same time, on the flip side of that, I could argue, and I don't know how you feel, that it also can annoy me when it becomes as an albatross. And
that happened with Austin Theory.
It did. You just have to like sort of acknowledge that did not go the way you would have hoped it would.
Mhm.
And at a certain point, it's like, is this still cool? Or like, is this just now annoying? And the way that they've done it now, where you kind of have to have it with you all the time. Like, remember, at first, we're talking about you might not have it for very long. And on top of that, it didn't even look the way it looked now. Like, it looked like an actual briefcase.
Right.
Now it's this very done up promotional item.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to have it every moment you see them.
Yeah, they're carrying it around in the airport.
So it's like, it just can end up weighing the person down a bit. So it's like, it's a perfect balance, Jonathan, of like having it for, you don't want to have it too short, but you don't want to have it too long.
Yeah.
I don't think you want it to sit there for 10 months. I think in the sweet spot is 2 to 6 months. I think that's a really good way to play. And then, of course, my hottest take of all on Money in the Bank. I wish it was still at Mania. I don't think it needs its own pay-per-view. I know I know this has become like sort of the fifth pay-per-view, you know, and in some ways you could argue it surpassed Survivor Series. And I get that. But for me, I just always thought it was amazing to open WrestleMania with that Money in the Bank ladder match. I thought that was superb. And if they had two, frankly, they had a men's and women's at Mania, considering you got 2 nights, that wouldn't still work. Of course it would. Yeah. And you get people on the card for Mania. So I really loved it in that way too.
Peter, tell everybody how they could check you out. Of course, like I said, one of the busiest guys out there in the media.
Well, I will keep it brief and just tell you, if you want to find me in the podcast world, that as John mentioned, on the Ring of Wrestling show, Cheap Heat. And if you're into hip hop or just want to hear, you know, the goings on of a 43-year-old soon to be married media person who's likes to complain about a variety of things and joke around with my comedian co-host, you can find the Juan Ep is Life podcast. Juan Ep is Life and Cheap Heat. Those are my 2 podcasts, and I have a lot of fun with both of them.
Awesome job, Peter. Always my pleasure. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me, dude.